Husam Zomlot, he's the Palestinian ambassador to the United Kingdom, joins us from Ramallah. First of all, so are you hearing anything from your diplomatic sources on whether there will be a ceasefire today?
Well, I'm not sure if, hello Sami first, I'm not sure if ceasefire is the right term. Ending the Israeli assault aggression is the right term, and there has been a lot of efforts with Egypt and with regional powers and of course with international powers to end this unprovoked assault, this very murderous machine. And the Security Council is supposed to meet tomorrow upon the request of the State of Palestine and the support of key Security Council members and Arab members of the Council and the UN. So we have no confirmation yet, except that the bombardment continues, the targeting of civilians continues, the Israeli trading of our blood, the Palestinian blood, as your reporter just said. This is just their part of starting their election campaign early on Gaza, as happens all the time. Politicians in Israel compete who has more Palestinian blood on their hands, and therefore this is an opportunity for all of us, the Palestinian people, to actually unite, because this is not an issue with Gaza only, this is an issue with the Palestinian people. You have reported what happened today in Jerusalem, the storming of Al-Aqsa Mosque, the thousands of Israeli illegal settlers in our most sacred sites, the occupied city of Jerusalem. You have reported what is happening in the West Bank. This is an all-out aggression by Israel, assault by Israel on us everywhere, wherever we are, whether in the West Bank, whether in Jerusalem, in Gaza, or even refugees outside.
Let me bring to you what the Israelis said. They said that this was an intervention in order to prevent a Palestinian attack, and their action in Jenin to arrest Bassam al-Saadi was also because he was, quote, I think Shin Bet called him a radicalizing element.
Well, this is really a very illegal term, immoral, irresponsible, and completely criminal. I mean, even in international law, occupying power has the responsibility to protect civilians. Extrajudicial killing is a war crime, and therefore you base your entire bombardment of an entire city, that is Gaza, that is populated by the poorest, the besieged for the last 16 years, besieged by air, besieged by land, besieged by sea, and you bombard them every once in a while under the pretext of information. This is a very well-defined war crime under international law. The only people who have rights here are the occupied people. They have the right to defend themselves, to defend their children, families, to defend their land. And therefore, this whole talk of Israel's right to self-defense, to defend itself as per the US statements, the UK statements, some Western countries' statement, is simply giving Israel a carte blanche, a green light to continue its murderous policies, to continue its war crimes, to continue the oppression of the Palestinian people. And when you compare it, Sami, with the position regarding Ukraine, then it hits you in the face, the double standards, the hypocrisy of the international community. And I think not only governments, by the way, even international mainstream media, the way, for instance, the BBC main website today was headlining the issue, Gaza-Israel war, Gaza-Israel conflict, Gaza-Israel violence, as if there is symmetry between the two sides, as if there are two armies, as if violence is perpetuated by the Palestinians, when in fact, as reported everywhere, it was Israel who has started this completely unprovoked, and it isn't just a war on our people in Gaza. It is a war on our people in Jerusalem. It is a war
there was a
on our people
report
in Jenin.
by UN investigators June the 7th that cited what it called the perpetual Israeli occupation as the root causes or the root cause of conflict. Isn't that the reality, that as long as the occupation continues, there may be a temporary pause or a ceasefire, a truce, but this cycle is going to go on?
Yeah, and I think the UN has issued an understatement. This is not just a military occupation that is perpetual, that has lasted for over 55 years, the longest in modern history. This is a colonial occupation that aims not at controlling the oppressed people, that is the Palestinian people, but aiming at displacing us and replacing us, as happening on a daily basis here behind us in the West Bank, in Jerusalem, and everywhere. And also, as per the consensus of the international human rights organization, the last was Amnesty International, as you know, Sami, the UK-based, Israel commits the crime against humanity of apartheid. Apartheid, a system of legal segregation, of preferential treatment, of Jewish supremacy in this land against the native Palestinian Christians and Muslims. And therefore, yes, this is the root causes of all this. The UN knows it. Numerous UN Security Council resolutions, numerous hundreds of UN General Assembly resolutions, every single government, including in London and Washington and Paris and Berlin and everywhere, know where the issue lies, what is the heart of it, where is the virus. But everyone looks at the fever, at the reactions, at the Palestinian quest to get rid of these realities.
All right, well,
let me jump in.
Let me jump in and say, even though it's quite clear when you read reports of international organizations and United Nations and Amnesty and Human Rights Watch, clearly symmetry is not the correct way to present this. There is an occupation and there is an occupier. But at the same time, there have been criticism of some of the Palestinian tactics in firing rockets towards Israeli cities that also exposes civilian life there to danger, right? But we must acknowledge, of course, all the casualties so far in this conflict have been Palestinian.
Well, that's why we, the Palestinian people, the Palestinian government, have referred the whole issue to the international legal system, the international justice system, to the ICC, International Criminal Court. And we said, we want you to investigate every act that happens in the area of the state of Palestine, the occupied state of Palestine, in Gaza, in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem. And guess who is blocking our efforts? Of course, it is Israel, first and foremost, but Israel's allies, the US, the UK, the UK Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, actually still current, Johnson, has issued a letter saying that we will prevent the Palestinians from accessing the ICC. Israel will not be taken there. When in Ukraine, only 2 weeks later, they pushed for Russia to be taken to the ICC. So we want the ICC to investigate, and we will accept whatever the international legal system will come up with, because international law, Sami, is clear-cut. The people under oppression and occupation and colonization and apartheid and besiegement and blockade and murder every day of our children and our inability to move or work anywhere, or our denial of the very basic right, have the rights under international law to resist, have the right to defend themselves. And the occupiers, on the other hand, have the absolute commitment and responsibility to protect the civilians under their occupation. And therefore, if the ICC takes its responsibility, if the prosecutors stop dragging their feet, we will accept whatever ruling that comes from the international community.
All right, thank you so much, Ambassador Husam Zomlot there.